down the rabbit hole of how whatever it is you're talking about, instead of just like lightheartedly, like, can you throw in a load of laundry? Like, we haven't done laundry in 3 days, right?
Right.
It's like, did you feel like maybe I wasn't helping you? Like, is there that kind of...
Oh, for us, I'm pretty unskillful. I'm Psychologist Dr. Bryan Violette. Today I'll be sitting down with Barbra Bottaro. She's my close friend and mother of 7. You may hear references to her husband Greg, whom I also interviewed. Link is in the description. Today, we're going to talk about what it's like being or being married to a therapist. This is the Catholic Center Show. We've talked about you doing what I do.
But then I look at you and Greg and Teresa and Stephanie and Gerard and Sean.
And you're all miserable.
No, and then I think, like, I will never be that good. I am, lacking
No, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Listen, there's something about clinical work. There's this phrase, I love basketball, and in basketball there's this phrase they say, you can't teach height.
Right.
I think there's something about that in clinical work where there are natural gifts. Typically what happens is someone is absolutely traumatized in their childhood.
Okay.
Like me.
90% of people.
Check.
Right? Yeah.
And then you're forced into a position where you're actually training to do clinical work from like 5 years old. You're paying attention to dynamics in your home. You're learning how to keep people happy.
Right.
You're observing behavior. You're picking up on patterns. And so by the time you get to, career choice time, it's really just about honing your skills and just like learning, just adding knowledge to it and curbing things, because we tend to go in one direction or the other in terms of our personality. Some people are better at empathy. Some people are better at challenging. There's different facets of doing clinical work. But what I know about you is you're extremely, extremely insightful. This is the segue into talking about Greg a little bit.
Oh, great.
I remember a comment you made, which was surprising to me, because you, Greg, myself, and Teresa were all hanging out. Mm-hmm. And you made some comment to the effect of like, I'm hanging out with a bunch of therapists. And when you made that comment, I was like, oh, she's not a therapist.
Right.
Like I almost forgot. You slide into that role of talking about people so easily. And that's just the norm for us. I mean, I married a therapist. Like we live and move and have our being in the world of psychology here. So, like you have those gifts, and probably some of it has, I imagine, worn off from being married to your husband,
Definitely.
Greg.
Sure. Thank God for him. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what's that like, being a non-clinician married to a clinician?
Ooh.
Are there times you're like, don't psychoanalyze me? Like, or, we don't have to talk about the tension points. There could be joyful moments too, but like overall, what's the experience
of
like?
I light up a cigarette and I'm like, no.
This should be a couch, actually.
Right. I just kick my feet up. I'm like, get your notebook out.
Yeah.
What is it like? That's such an open-ended question.
What about from the beginning, the first time? Like, it must have been like, wow, this guy's different than a lot of dudes because he talks about things like feelings and stuff.
No, Greg and I are very, very different. Like, there's a lot that's very similar about us, right? Sometimes that's a pressure point. Like, we're both the oldest, right? And that can be tricky. But I think that what Greg is really good at, is not a strong skill set for me usually. I'm sure there's some things that overlap for both of us. And what some of the things that I am good at is not at the top of Greg's skill set. So in our dynamic, I tend to bring like more humor, right? Whether it's avoidant or just realizing like this actually can lighten up and it doesn't need to be so heavily like psychoanalyzed and focused on like, how are we going to, improve this in our family or like, come Lord Jesus. Like sometimes things are just going to be as they are. And like, we're just going to kind of detach from it. When Greg and I met, I was outside of the church. And the thing that I saw about him that was so different wasn't necessarily anything related to psychology, but
oh no,
he has a really beautiful, childlike
playfulness.
no, like heart and disposition, sort of. Not even playfulness, but
like purity of heart.
a purity of heart.
Yeah.
And you'll see it like if he watches a Disney movie. And it's just this like, it's like this seeking, this beautiful seeking. And so what I hadn't bumped up against before was his just like profound respect for himself and for women in general, but for me, right? That was what was shocking. Like, where did that come from?
Right.
And he really stood his ground on it. And so immediately it was like this ability for me to trust him because
he was protecting you, even from yourself.
And he was protecting himself
from parts of you.
Well, not that I was going to have a bad intention, but he was just like, here are the things that I believe.
Yeah.
Right. And like, and in just like the most loving way, I respect you. I respect myself. And for a man to respect himself in a truly authentic way, I don't think a lot of women have seen.
No.
And so it's different than the guy being like the macho protector, right? And then that's it. Or even this idea that like, well, he just loves me and so we just can't help ourselves sort of thing, right? Like,
or the word that's coming to my mind right now, which is not the most appropriate or clinical, is simp. The simps out there. Have you heard that term before? A simp?
Yeah.
Okay. Like the men who are deferential and don't have much confidence in themselves or backbones, and basically
Right.
the woman walks all over him.
Sure. Yeah. Or
that's the most common today, I think.
That's interesting.
In the larger culture.
Right. I could see that. Or even this idea that like, well, you know, it's okay because he just loves me so much, right? Like
mistreats you.
Not mistreats, but like there's like a level, right? Like there are reasons why we believe what we believe going into marriage and even dating and all of that. And it's sort of like, often it can kind of get twisted into this like, well, but we're on the path to marriage. And so it's, you know, it's okay. Greg held his ground like in such a beautiful way that was like, there was, he believed it for himself, regardless of who was in that placeholder, right? Of like, you know, future wife, right? Like,
yeah.
So
he wasn't going to bend.
He wasn't going to bend. And it showed me on the flip side that like he respected himself and that he would always then carry that towards me. And
Yes.
that wasn't gonna move.
How we treat others is how we treat ourselves is how we treat others. Those are deeply connected.
And it's like so impossible to see that acted out.
Yeah.
Especially like in an early relationship, I think. So
Well, that's cool.
it's really great.
Yeah.
So here we are.
So it feels less clinical. He doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, the psychoanalysis all the time. Your relationship transcends that.
Yeah, I mean sometimes because I'm not a psychologist, maybe it's like a beauty in ignorance, right? Where sometimes he says things and I'm just like, knock it off.
I think you have to say that to people that do what I do and what Greg does.
Yeah.
You do. It's very difficult to turn it off.
Well, do you ever get rabbit holed? There's one thing, let's say you and Teresa are talking about something. And you're both analytical minds. And so you guys just start going down the rabbit hole of how whatever it is you're talking about, instead of just like lightheartedly, like, you know, can you throw in a load of laundry? Like, we haven't done laundry in 3 days, right?
Right.
It's like, did you feel like maybe I wasn't helping you? Like, is there that kind of...
Oh, for us, I'm pretty unskillful. I need more of that. I need more rabbit holes.
Oh.
I need more rabbit holes. I think when we go down a rabbit hole, it's two people that do what I do, going deep into something at the benefit of one of us.
Oh, okay.
So it's like kind of like a therapy session where we can create a safe space to explore deep parts of who we are. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. Day to day, I mean, if there were, I mean, we actually do have cameras in our house, but I imagine if people were just watching us day to day, they wouldn't be like maybe they would be like they're in mental health, but I don't even know that they would. I don't know if they would.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I have parts of myself.
Right,
and even on this show,
yeah,
I'm not in my therapist part right now. I mean,
I know.
I mean, look around. Like, I mean, I can imagine what people project even onto this imagery. Like,
Right.
if I'm in psychologist mode, I'm like, I would probably make things more neutral, more welcoming. Maybe not put a demon behind my head.
Right.
When I'm asking you to trust me.
You're like, I have a problem with cats. And meanwhile, I'm staring at like a demon. Yeah.
Yeah. And my guests generally, at least so far, I have a very deep level of comfort with. And, you know, I can tease, I can bust chops. But, you know, when you're working with someone in a clinical context, there's going to be a lot more sensitivity and gentleness around people's parts and the rawness of who they are. So, you know, this is much more of a fun part of Dr. Bryan, not
awesome.
work mode Dr. Bryan.
Yeah.
So in general, I try not to be work mode Dr. Bryan unless someone's really asking for it or they're suffering. And I'm even that. It's, you know, people you love in your life, you can't help them. That's the hard part. What I do is you can only help people that are coming to you for help. So I may see people's problems in my family or amongst my friends, and I just kind of have to shut up and just be Bryan instead of Dr. Bryan, even though it hurts.
There's so many things in what you just said that I want to ask you about, actually.
Go ahead.
Well, the first thing is, it's interesting. Do you find it that even, you know, you said you can't help people unless they ask you, but I imagine too that you probably...
I try anyway.
Well, no, that you get asked sometimes, like, well, what do you think about that? I mean, you know, you're a psychologist. What do you think? They're not going to take your advice anyway.
Yeah.
So even if they're asking for your help, right? It's like you're never a prophet in your own town.
There's a lot of that. I tell an ongoing joke about my mom where her and I were talking about, I don't know what it was, but something about the way people are or something like that.
Yeah. And
she said something like, Bryan, what they say is blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Mom, I'm they. I'm not your child. Like, I'm the expert that you're referring to.
I'm the person you're quoting.
Like, exactly. Yeah. So there is a little bit of that. I think, I mean, there's always projection. So I think, I mean, not everybody in my family is as devoted to the Catholic faith. So a lot of times there's projections onto me that I'm going to be critical or judgmental when actually, so they don't bring the issue to me because they're anticipating that I'm going to have a certain kind of response when in reality.
Well, you're like, I'm just judgmental even if I wasn't Catholic, right? Is that?
No, I actually, listen, I am a mess, but one thing that I will pat myself on the back for is that I'm not critical. I'm not judgmental of people's choices. I'm not.
I know.
I work on that because I'm such a mess and I've made so many mistakes that I just try to be like as merciful as I can on myself and so as to be merciful on other people. And that's what this ultimately, like this show, the spirit of this show is, look, you're on your own path to God. I'm not going to, like, I want to hear your perspective, your faith, your political persuasion, whatever it is. Come talk to me about it. Let's not shut down dialogue or conversation just because I have my own worldview.
It's an interesting point. I find with a lot of theys, a lot of yous, you guys really like people. Whether you say, like, you know, there's that whole, I don't like people, you know, people.
Oh, no, I'm an extrovert.
You really like people. You see the beauty in people, whether or not it's a beautiful presentation or not, right? There's always something underneath it. I think Teresa's like that. Teresa's like super empathetic.
Yeah, she is.
Very empathetic. And Greg is like that too. Like sometimes I'm like, where, you know, this is like a complete disaster of a person or situation. And there's this like, you know, there's so many layers to each person, and he tends to see like still the most beautiful parts. Yeah. It's harder if the person's close to you and you're being disappointed by them.
Yes. When there's your own emotional investment, it makes it way more challenging.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say about just going back to like a future career, I'm sure that's a skill set I could possibly learn, but it is not a natural thing for me, or for many of my parts, I should say, maybe, to be super empathetic.
Me either.
Yeah, but like...
No, but me either. I'm great at challenging. I'm great at being direct and being authentic and saying, look, this is what I'm seeing. And a lot of clinicians have a hard time with that. They do a great job of creating this safe space, but they don't move their clients forward because they are scared to say the difficult thing. I'm the other side where I can say what's hard, but I have to remember to slow down and be like, build rapport.
Right.
So when you say something, you don't sound like,
so you're just not pummeling them.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a skill that can be cultivated and developed. And even what you shared about Greg or Teresa's ability to go down to that deep level and see the beauty, no matter what's happening on the surface, that can be trained and developed as well. Because in our work, you deal with people's defense mechanisms that are very challenging to sit with. I mean, I've been attacked by clients. My character's been attacked. I've been blamed for things, and I can't take that personal. So I have to learn how to see why this person is attacking me and what I represent to them. Can I take ownership over some of that? Like, you learn to find, like, we love everybody. We make that distinction. I love them, but do I like them? We talked about that with our family oftentimes. But you can even learn how to find things you like about every person. Because when you remove the defense mechanisms and gain access to their true self.
It's always beautiful.
Yeah. Every defense mechanism is boring. I mean, it's predictable. It's the same. There's a certain closed set of defense mechanisms that are apparent across different people.
A lot of them are just textbook.
Right. Or combinations of defenses, but there's only so much you can learn about it. And it's predictable. But the person is unique and interesting and never boring.
Right.
So with those, there's no matter how thick someone's defenses are, you can there you are. You could see that
even
part
if
of
it's
them.
a blip.
Yeah, even if it's a blip, and you feel like, and that's like, it's like a drop of water in a desert.
It's like the thing that keeps you going.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like if you know you might, if you pull that lever one more time, you might get the jackpot.
Yeah.
You know it's possible.
Well, that's a hard part too, is you just have to trust, because it's, clinical work can go like this. It's not linear. You have to be patient and wait for the next moment where you're connecting with someone. You don't know when that's going to be, because they have their free will, their own choices. Right. And you hope that you create a space safe enough where trust is built and they'll allow you access to more raw or more in-pained parts of themselves. But you never know when that's going to happen.
Life is tough, right?
Life is tough, yeah.
Life is really tough.
But I think you could do it. I think you'd be fantastic. And not just you could do it, but I think you'd be fantastic.
Thank you.
I mean, maybe by the time the kids are out, you'll have your fill of psychology. You'll never want to do it again. Anything like that. But I've always thought you'd be great at what I do.
I will say, and this comes from a place of humility, but there are definitely things that are easier for me, right? It's very easy for me to see a defense mechanism. You're
very insightful. You read people very well.
Right. Reading someone is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Or, there's usually a gut instinct, right? Like, it's very easy for me to just take parts and sometimes to my detriment, make it a story. So to be very discerning, right? Because you start to take parts of what you believe and then all of a sudden you can build a story that's not accurate. Mm-hmm. I'm not usually wrong, though. I'm not when it comes to that, right?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
But if my lack of empathy gets in the way, that kind of thing, then that just could derail. So that's tricky. It's interesting that can be a learned skill set. But
yeah, it's basically the antidote to narcissism. It's very simple. There's narcissism all over our culture right
everywhere.
Now.
Yeah.
And it's something that people commonly struggle with. But the antidote to narcissism is empathy. It's a very simple equation. You want to learn how to be less narcissistic? Think about what's going on inside of someone else. Put yourself in their shoes. And the more you do that, the less your narcissistic defenses will drive the bus. And even narcissistic defenses, like underneath them, there is a part that is good. That's desiring excellence or desire to
love.
Of course, at the bottom, it's all love for everybody. Right. There's different flavors for different types, but in any event, empathy is the answer. It's really the answer for everything. So you can learn that. It's not even about learning it. It's natural, actually. When you calm down that part that is preventing you from seeing other people,
right?
Then the empathy is just going to well up within you.
Yeah. Right. It's just sure.